Thank you for listening above Rubies Podcast, created by a mom for every mom and parents for that matter, embracing parenthood and sanity. Here to help you get by through weekly discussions on parenting, relationships, home, and faith as you juggle daily in life. All right, everyone, I am back with another episode. This time I am with Maria, who is a president and a CEO of Autism in Black Ink. She's also the wife of Dr. Davis-Pierre, my guest last week. Hi, Maria. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. And as usual, good evening to you. Good morning to me.
Yes, that time always is tricky to me.
Yeah, it is. Especially now that you're on daylight savings. So we are 13 hours ahead.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. This episode will more likely talk about autism, as I know a few people who have kids with autism, but here in the Philippines, not a lot of people understand or know about this. So I thought this is the perfect time to provide more education or more information about autism, what it is, and what to expect when your kids have autism.
Yeah.
Now, in a layman's term, what is autism, a spectrum disorder?
So autism is a neurological disorder or diagnosis. So it impacts the brain and how we would see it, those who are not healthcare professionals, how you all would see it would be through sensory, like if your child reacted to certain clothes or certain food items and didn't like how it felt. There's another characterization called stimming. It's when they do something repeatedly, like spin in circles. There's also the language communication. So there may be a speech delay. Comprehension, not quite understanding, what you're trying to convey in a conversation, especially if they don't have an interest in it.
Yeah.
So there's many things that would on a spectrum. So for instance, with my daughter, things that she may have, somebody else might not present with. So it just depends on that particular individual and what their characteristics of autism are.
And when did you realize your daughter Maria may have autism? What have you noticed that made you think that maybe it's about time to check whether or not she has autism?
Yeah, so at about 6 months, I noticed there were some sensory characteristics with Malia, and they kind of clued me in like, okay, this may be autism. But Dr. Barry was very adamant that I not diagnose his child. So I left it alone. But at 10 months, she actually regressed in her speech. So things that she was saying, like mama, dada, ball, all, simple words that were developmentally where she should be, she actually forgot all of those things. And when trying to get her to say them, it was if she just couldn't. And then I also thought she was deaf because loud noises would occur and she wouldn't have any reaction to that. Yeah. So that just let me know that, okay, we do need to get her checked out.
Is that always how early a parent can determine that their kids may have autism, or that's not always the case?
So healthcare professionals can catch it that early and diagnose it that early. But usually parents are going to notice, parents who don't have any kind of medical background, any mental health background, they're going to catch it, catch these characteristics around 2 or older, because that is the stage where children have a burst developmental wise. So they're, having strings of words that they're going to be saying. So you'll notice if there's a delay in the speech at that time, right? They're going to be doing things developmentally at that time. And that's why you're going to be like, oh, okay, they're not hitting these milestones. So that's probably when a parent who didn't have a background would know.
How many parents are like trying to deny that their kid may have autism? What do you think should they do if, in that case? Do we have any percentage of those who are in denial that their kids may have autism?
I don't have any exact percentages on, denial. I think it just varies by the parent because
Mm-hmm.
those statistics aren't necessarily things that medical professions are looking at. So they're more likely looking
Mm-hmm.
at a gap in diagnosis, or how
Mm-hmm.
long does it take, a child to get a diagnosis. But
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a large amount of a denial, especially in minority
Mm-hmm.
communities, because we don't get the information like other communities do. So other
Mm-hmm.
communities will know what autism is and characteristics of autism and what to do if they believe that their child is autistic, while
Mm-hmm.
minority communities, and specifically in the Black community that I deal with,
Yeah.
we don't get that information. We
Mm-hmm.
get the wrong information. So it seems quite scary to us when somebody will say autism because we don't have the right information. And that can lead to not wanting your child to get a formal diagnosis or get a diagnosis, which then leads to a gap in the services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of that, what prompted you to start Autism in Black, which I think you've somehow answered already, but walk us through that. What's the birth of Autism in Black?
Autism in Black came about because it did take us a long time to get Malia's diagnosis. And
Uh-huh.
I am a licensed therapist. I'm a clinician.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I'm married to somebody who is a physician. And
Yes.
it with us having education and resources, it still took a long time to get Malia her diagnosis. So I was thinking about those in my community who don't have the education and the resources and how they go about getting the diagnosis. And then when we got her the diagnosis, we had a lot of healthcare professionals coming into our home and not taking our culture into consideration. They were just trying to apply what they learn in their textbooks to us without thinking about how our culture can impact their treatment planning. And I saw that this was more of a norm. And then when you go on any autism sites, I don't see anybody that looks like me. I see, mostly white people. And to me, I couldn't relate to that. So it made it seem as if autism was just for white people when we know it's not. So I wanted more representation. So I created Autism in Black for Black parents who have a child diagnosed with autism.
Yeah, which is a really good channel for your followers because it's very helpful. I've learned a thing or two from there as well. While helping you with your podcast. If not for Autism in Black, I wouldn't have known that there are a few paperwork that need to be done and all that legal stuff. In the background, I'm not even sure how it works here in the Philippines. So that's really good that you're reaching out for your community to learn more about it. What do you think are the challenges of raising a child with autism?
I think for minorities, it's representation. So having somebody understand our culture. I'm sure, those living in the Philippines could understand that as well, that the access to healthcare resources, having that access to certain things, we don't always have that. There's certain things in place that keep us from accessing resources. There's also a lot of evaluator bias because the healthcare system, mental health system in particular, is, pretty whitewashed. So, the DSM, which is the book that we use for diagnosis, it was created by white men on white men. And if you're not white, you may not meet or have the characterizations of what they're saying in that book. So it's going to look different for us. So that leads to a lot of misdiagnosis, not getting the right diagnosis, not getting any diagnosis. There's so many things in play when it just comes to getting the diagnosis. Then we start talking about access to resources and access to therapies and understanding. And that's even harder to think about.
Exactly. Now let's talk about Malia because I know she plays tennis and is very good at that. In fact,
Yes.
one time Dr. Barry said you were going somewhere and she was gonna meet Serena.
Yeah, we went to the U.S. Open last August. And we got to see Serena. We didn't get to meet her, but we did get to see her play, and that was a big deal. Yeah.
I bet she had really a great time.
She did. She's very active in sports and has a natural talent at it, which she does not get from either me or her father.
And that's what I noticed. Kids with autism, they really have this special gifts that it's just amazing. Aside from her gift in tennis, what special gifts does she have?
I think any child who is autistic, whatever their interest is what they're really going to put all their focus into. So for Malia, that is sports. She plays tennis, she plays soccer, bowling, basketball. She is quite active, but she enjoys those things. So she puts a lot of effort into those things. There are some kids who enjoy learning about science or, learning about math. Leah loves science as well. She loves science experiments. So she loves doing those type of things. So whatever that interest is, they put a lot of focus into those things because it's something that they're interested in.
That's awesome. So that is why they become really great at it. So it's like an interest led then. Let's talk about the twins. How older is Maria?
8, and then our twins, Davis and Brooklyn, are 5.
Yeah. Do they realize that Malia has autism, or do they have to understand that at an early age? If yes, how can the siblings of kids with autism better understand them?
So I think for the twins, they don't quite notice anything right now. Although we are very vocal, about autism in our household, of course, with me being the face of autism and Black, but I don't think they quite have an understanding yet. Of course, when they're older and they have questions, or as, if they have questions next week, we'll have a sit down and have, talk with them on their level. But as of right now, they don't really, they just, that's my sister and that's all I know. But for a lot of siblings, especially if it's older siblings, they are, of course, they're going to, because they're older, their comprehension level is, they're going to understand and know, and parents have to have conversations with the siblings, because a lot of times they're left out. And they're, when you have a child with a disability, a lot of spotlight goes onto them. So your child could be feeling left out. They could also be feeling like, they need to be, just as protective, or they need to be in a parenting role. There's so many avenues that a child can go on, based on, what's going on in their household. And I think a lot of times it is a lot of pressure put on them to, I have to make sure that, I'm doing everything right because, mom and dad have to focus on my sibling and make sure everything is good with them. So the least I can do is not, put any added stress. And I think sometimes that just puts a lot of stress on the children, and, we want them to be children. So, it takes a lot to manage and balance having multiple children without disabilities. When you add in disabilities, it gets even harder. So, parents have to give themselves some grace, but also be able to have intentional time with each of their children. So the child who is autistic and the child who is not autistic.
I agree. That is so true. Now, how challenging was it for you, or did you have a hard time taking care of Malia, or how did that look like for you and Dr. Barry?
So with Malia, no, we didn't have a challenging time. I think for a lot of parents, where the frustration comes in is that dealing with other things like dealing with schools, dealing with healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
I mean, if your child does happen to have some maladaptive behaviors, then of course those things can be difficult. But Malia doesn't have any maladaptive behavior. So for us, our frustration came with dealing with the schools and trying to make sure that, you know, she's getting a quality education, or dealing with therapists who, you know, believe that she should have these interventions when it's like, no, we're telling you that that's not working. So just dealing with those avenues is what the frustration came in for us.
There's a different kind of frustration than in that case.
Yes, a lot
No
of
wonder why
control.
that's one of the topics in one of your episodes.
It's out of your control. You can't, you know, don't have much that you can control with it. And with the school system, it gets very difficult here in the United States because they have a IEP plan that they have to go by and, you know, make these goals. And then sometimes they're just not good plans that they give the children. So it makes it more difficult to access a quality education.
Exactly. Now, if you were to give an advice to parents of kids with autism, what would it be, especially those who just started to notice their kids may have autism?
It's give yourself some grace. You know, one thing that parents do when they get that diagnosis is they go right to Google and they put autism, and you get so many hits. You get so many different opinions, and then you start to think, am I doing it right? Am I parenting right? And you have to, you know, take some of the knowledge, but also trust your parenting gut. Because, you know, those experts aren't living with you in your house. You know, therapists usually only see your child for a certain amount of hours a week. So they're not getting everything that you're seeing. So, you know, you have to understand that you are the expert with your child as well. And you have a say so, and you need to trust your parenting gut.
That's a good one. That's a good takeaway. Because, you know, sometimes you just think that when you are with a doctor or a professional or someone who is trying to evaluate you, not only for autism, but especially with your kids, especially us who are in the non-medical field, we think that whatever they're telling us is what's, you know what I mean, is what's correct and what's true.
And
that's a
not,
good.
because they're not getting the entire picture. Which is why we have a high rate of misdiagnosis within the Black community when it comes to autism, because they're looking at it from one way. So you have to, you know, had it been for, you know, us listening to doctors, Malia would have got a diagnosis at a later time. You know, we had to advocate for her. So, you know, do what you have to do for your child, and don't let anybody else try to make you feel bad or otherwise because of how you're parenting your child.
And it's always a case-to-case basis. How about friends who are like us, of people with friends that are parents of kids with autism? How can we understand them or the family even more? And how can we extend help without having to sound judgmental or having to like be judgmental to the family of kids with autism?
You know, this is a question that I love. Because families, you know, and friends, they're well-meaning, you know, so, you know, they want to help. And a lot of times the first thing family members and friends do is they go to Google too. And then they want to, you know, educate you as the parent on what you should be doing. And a lot of times that just adds extra stress.
Exactly.
Because there's so much information out there. So what I tell family members and friends is that, you know, listen to the needs of your family member or friend. What they need you to do, that's who you should be for them. If they just need you there to vent and talk to, then that's, you know, the role that you should take. If you want to learn, of course, there are books out there, but you can also ask questions. And if that family member wants to educate you, then they will. But be careful about the knowledge that you are receiving from outsiders, and then going to present that to that person and be like, well, this is what you should be doing. No, that's not what we want to do. We want to be a helpful resource, so be a good support system. And, sometimes it does get uncomfortable in having conversations. So, you say things when you start to get uncomfortable. Like, if I say, oh, my child is autistic, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. This is not a terminal illness. I'm telling you that, she has. So there's nothing to be sorry about. You don't need to feel sorry for us. So it's just things like that, that can be stressful and hurtful.
Yes, exactly. And most of the time, these friends do not even, or friends and family do not even mean that. It's just that they don't know. I guess we also do not know how to react to it and what the right words to say are. So it's very important to give out the right help that the family needs.
Exactly. So, sometimes it's just, okay, can I do anything for you? Because a lot of times it's hard for us to ask for help, especially when we're talking about our child who has a disability and we're working so hard to, get them to make progress in certain areas, and then have somebody come in and mess that up. It gets a little difficult. So we don't want to necessarily ask for help a lot of times, but sometimes it's just being there. Sometimes it's just bringing a meal. Sometimes it's just saying, hey, you want to take a nap for an hour while I watch your child, things like that.
Wow, that's really good. If there's one takeaway I'm bringing with me, it would be, do you need any help? That's all I should say. That's all I should say. I don't really have a family member yet, but I have a few friends and online that are parents of kids with autism. And I want to be very sensitive for them, that whatever I say will not sound offensive. So that's a really good advice right there.
Yeah, because many people get offended by different things. So something that would offend somebody else is like the term autistic versus person with autism. For me, we use autistic. That may offend somebody else, another parent, but it doesn't offend me. So, just understanding what language they use and understanding, where they're coming from, so that you're not offensive to them personally, but knowing that it's different for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, congratulations to Autism in Black. You've been featured a few times already in Forbes. What is the goal for Autism in Black?
We're trying to be worldwide with our advocacy and empowerment for Black families, because it's just, the information is scarce out there for us. The representation is scarce out there for us. So that's what we're trying to do, go global with the mission of, spreading awareness, acceptance, empowering parents to be able to get rid of the shame associated, with having a child with disabilities, as well as training, organizations to be more culturally responsive when it comes to the Black disability community.
That's awesome. Most of my listeners are Filipinos. If they want to learn more about Autism in Black or follow you, how can they do that?
So my website is autisminblack.org. And on Facebook, I'm Autism in BLK. And on Instagram, I'm Autism in BLACK.
And I'll also send in your links in the show notes, so they should have that available if they want to learn more about you and Dr. Berry as well. Thank you so much for your time today, Maria.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Sign up to my newsletter so you're notified of my next podcast at www.abovepreciousrubies.com, or follow me via Apple Podcast or Spotify. Today's Bible reading is from Psalm chapter 127, verses 3-5. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate.